Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about Islamic prophecies. Ooh, isn't that a thinker? So luckily here I have Bob's here is going to be helping us think about this in a whole new way. So thank you so much, Bob, for coming on to my show, sharing your time and your perspective with me. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you are here with me, so I truly appreciate this. Let's just dive right in, right? When you hear the words Islamic prophecies, what does that necessarily make you think about?
Well, I've been familiar with Islamic prophecies for a long time, particularly since I wrote this book about 2012 back in the year 2009. And I told people, by the way, the world would not end in 2012. And actually, world events aligned up with like 32 different things by the end of 2012 that I said in my book either would happen or I said in my book it would not happen. So I got interested. And my wife and I have been to several Islamic countries. And I decided I should do, you use the term deep dive, I should use kind of a deep dive into Islam, learn a bit more about it. And so I did. And so I wrote this book called Islamic and Biblical Prophecies for the 21st Century. Now, the average American doesn't know much about Islamic prophecies, doesn't think that they would matter at all, but realize that you've got 2 billion Muslims in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
Roughly one out of four people. Okay.
Yeah.
And they do believe in their prophecies. Okay. For example, you've got the situation with Iran and you've got the Ayatollah. Now, there are, for your listeners, just some background on Islam. Okay. Islam was founded by a guy by the name of Muhammad. Now, one thing I learned when I did this book was I thought, okay, so it popped up 600, 700s, whatever. But according to Islam, by the way, it says it's actually the original religion of Abraham. Basically, what Islam teaches, and I'll get into the prophecy in a moment, basically it says that God spoke to Abraham, he did various things. Moses came along, he improved things. Jesus came along, he improved things. But that the Jews and the Christians kind of deviated. So God had to send Muhammad to restore things and make things right. Okay, that's basically what Islam teaches about itself.
Hmm.
Now, as far as prophecy goes, you've got, for example, three different groups of Muslims. One group are called Sunni Muslims. They're the majority. Depending on how you count it, 85% of Muslims are Sunni Muslims. And they're basically the main people in the Arab countries, as
Okay.
well as Indonesia. Okay, they're basically Sunni Muslims.
Okay.
Then you have the Shiite Muslims, and that's what the Ayatollah is. And the Shiites are in mostly Iran, but also in Iraq to a degree, and they were in charge in Syria until
Okay.
the president of Syria was fled, has been replaced. So that's the Sunnis, the Shiites. Then there's a smaller group called the Sufis. Have you ever heard of anything called whirling or twirling dervishes?
No.
Okay. When my wife and I were in Turkey, one of the times we actually saw this dance, you want to call it that. The Sufis like to spin around.
Oh,
Literally,
okay.
they spin around. And then they become kind of dizzy, I guess, and they believe that somehow that helps them better commune with God.
Hmm.
Okay, but they're a very small amount of Muslims, 2 to 5%, somewhere around that. Where the Shiites are 10, 15%.
Okay.
Now, what's any of this got to do with prophecy? Well, you got the Ayatollah, and he has his view of what the world should be like. Uh, Years ago, when Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran, they put out a video showing Iran essentially conquering Jerusalem, and that Ahmadinejad was somebody within Shiite prophecy, and he was going to lead it up and all that. Now, by the way, he's still alive. He hasn't been president for a while. He'd like to be president. He wanted to be president this last time. They wouldn't let him run. But um, they believe that if they take over Israel, that the rest of the Muslims will unify behind them. And that's one of the things that the Ayatollah tried to get Muslims to do after the United States, after Israel, and then the United States came in and launched bombs into his country. And actually, while the Sunnis didn't join the Shiites, the Muslim world had some meetings, actually, Muslim groups, and condemned the United States and Israel for this, but didn't go so far as to, okay, we're going to join Iran and fight against Israel and the United States. Now, from a prophetic perspective, the Bible talks about somebody rising up called the King of the South. You can read about this guy in the 11th chapter of the book of Daniel, which is in the Old Testament, as well as the book of Ezekiel, chapter 30. This person is mentioned. Now, why do I mention this? Because the Muslims, particularly the Shiites, but also the Sunnis, believe that in the time of the end, a leader is going to rise up to unify Islam. Now, the Ayatollah hopes it's going to be his view, and the others don't go along with this. So this guy, they call him the Imam Mahdi.
Okay.
The Imam is kind of like, for Catholics and Protestants, you would call it like a priest or a pastor. Okay. Now, Shiite Islam is different than Sunni Islam, and they kind of tell you have to go through an imam between you and God. He's kind of supposed to kind of help get you to God. So the Sunnis consider that to be idolatry. So they're not really into that so much. But anyway, the Ayatollah believes that he's actually spoken to the Imam Mahdi. Now, we're going to get a little technical for a moment. According to Shiite Islam, the Imam Mahdi has been a suspended animation for approximately 1400 years. He's not dead. He's been alive. He's a cousin of Muhammad's. He's still alive. And current Ayatollah has said he's seen him or talked to him at least twice. Okay. I don't believe that, but I don't doubt that maybe he imagined it or he had a dream. I don't know what it was. Okay. And so that's their view. Now, the Sunni Muslims don't agree with that. What the Sunni Muslims say is, yes, we want Islam to be united. Yes, a time is going to come when Islam will unite. There's a group called the Muslim Brotherhood. They want to unite all the land from Spain, by the way, to Indonesia. Now, within Islam, there's kind of a view that if Islam ever controlled the territory, it's always supposed to have the territory.
Okay.
Why is that important?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons they are against the nation of Israel. They say this was part of the Ottoman Empire. Turkey controlled it. They were Sunni Muslims. Then we've allowed the Jews to have the land. We didn't care that they lived there before, but they can't dominate it. It's supposed to be Islam. We wanted Islamic, which is one of the reasons why you see difficulties with the peace agreements between these groups, because you've got what are considered the radical groups, like, let's say, Hamas, who says, Israel, you can't deal with Israel. It's got to be gone. We've got to destroy it. Even the Muslim Brotherhood, who is considered to be less extreme, has said, we can't agree to any tying that long-term Israel gets to stay. Okay. And by the way, the Muslim Brotherhood is a Sunni group. And they are spread throughout most of the Sunni Muslim countries. So anyway, the Muslim Brotherhood wants somebody to rise up to lead all of Islam. Well, the Bible talks about this guy who's going to rise up called the King of the South. Turns out, you look at the scriptures, he's in charge of a bunch of lands that are currently dominated by Islam. For example, the Bible mentions Egypt, okay, North Africa. It uses the word Libya. Now, currently we think of Libya as a country, but it actually, Libya basically meant everything that was west of Egypt in North Africa.
Okay.
And while it's a mistranslation in most Bibles, you'll see the word Ethiopia or Ethiopians. It actually is the word Cushite. And that basically means the peoples to the east, the darker skinned people to the east of Egypt. So basically, all of North Africa uh, is part of this king of the south, based on some other writings in the 83rd chapter of the book of Psalms and the 30th chapter of uh, the book of Ezekiel. We also believe it will include Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, etc.
Yeah.
So, so Islam believes this confederation is going to rise up, that this will help pull the Muslims out of poverty.
Hmm.
The Muslims will be wealthier. They will build up their military, and they are going to be part of some kind of a peace deal. Now, for your listeners who uh, may believe or accept at least parts of the Bible, uh, Book of Daniel, chapter 9, verses 26 and 27, talk about the time where a European leader, not the top leader, but a lower level leader, is going to confirm some kind of a covenant for 1 week. Say, okay, what's that got to do with anything? 1 week.
Yeah.
Well, according to the Roman Catholic saint Hippolytus from the early third century, that 1 week means 7 years. According to their doctrine saint of their church, Jerome, it means 7 years. According to most Protestant prophecy watchers, that 1 week means 7 years.
Hmm.
According to people in Church of God, such as myself, we believe that means 7 years.
Okay.
Now, what's that got to do with Islam?
Yeah.
Turns out that Muhammad was familiar with the Bible, by the way. And as I said, they consider that Abraham was one of their saints and Moses was one of their saints. Yes, even Moses, okay? And Jesus, who they call the prophet. So Muhammad was familiar with the Bible. And in Islam, they teach that the time will come when this leader will rise up, this Imam Mahdi, and he will make a 7 year deal with basically a Roman Catholic leader.
Hmm.
Okay. And again, that is consistent with Book of Daniel, chapter 9, verses 26 and 27.
Hmm. That's
They
interesting.
also say, they also say, and I'll use their term, with a progeny of Aaron. What does that mean? That would mean somebody who has to deal with the Levitical priesthood. So somebody in of the country called Israel right now also would have some involvement. So they teach this deal is going to happen. Same sounds like the same deal that the Bible tells us about. Well, according to Islamic prophecy, the European power will break the deal in the middle of it. So after 3.5 years, he's going to break this deal. And then, according to Islam, Antichrist will reign for 3.5 years. And then Jesus will return. Okay. Now, that's very similar to what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches, by the way, in those verses I told you about in Daniel 9, 26 and 27, that this European leader will break the deal in the middle. Now, this leader in the Bible from Europe is called a prince in Daniel 9:26, but he is called the king of the north in the 11th chapter of Daniel. And we know he's the same guy because in Daniel 11, verse 31, he breaks the deal. Okay. And in Daniel 9:27, it says in the middle, basically, he's going to break the deal.
Yeah.
So this leader, yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I'm really intrigued. I'm listening.
Okay. All right. So what's happening is that um, this guy is going to, won't be the top guy when he confirms the deal, but he'll be a top leader later. Well, anyway, according to my understanding of biblical prophecy, and it's also shared by, for example, early Roman Catholic writers like Jerome and various Protestant writers, we believe that after this deal is confirmed, approximately 7 years later, Jesus is going to return. Now,
Okay.
that was actually Hippolytus thought that too. By the way, I mentioned him
Well,
before.
Well, that's really interesting. You know what I mean? It really kind of ties in all of these religions in some way, shape, or form if you really do the math and you tie everything together, like you're saying. Like, that's, I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, it's kind of like intense to think about. But for you personally, do you think that's what's going to happen? Or do you think it's just a prophecy and we will just wait and see with time?
Oh, no, I absolutely believe it will happen. As a matter of fact, I've been recently doing a sermon series on the book of Daniel. And I'll tell you something interesting. I used to be an editor for Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately, Wikipedia has strayed from its original premise of having no point of view. So if you go to Wikipedia's article, for example, about the book of Daniel, it tells you that it wasn't written when the Bible says. And the reason they say this, by the way, is because too many things that were in that book have happened. And they know it's happened. So they say then there's no way that Daniel could that they don't believe in prophecy. They don't believe in God. They're pretty anti-biblical. And so they're saying, well, it had been written after this guy called Antiochus Epiphanes rose up in the 160s BC because it just lined up too well. Alexander the Great was predicted, etc. Not by name, but what his empire
Yeah.
was. So this is all
Yeah.
Daniel. They say, well, this isn't possible because so it must have been written later. All right.
Yeah.
However, interestingly, I there was an article a couple of weeks ago about using AI to redate the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls, for your listeners, are a set of writings that were found uh, uh, over by the Dead Sea. Okay, and they're not the Bible, but sometimes there are parts of the Bible that are in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Hmm.
Okay. Anyway, people said that those were probably written between 100 BC and 100 AD. Okay.
Yeah.
But by using AI analysis, they've concluded this part of the book of Daniel maybe was this fragment that they have is dated from perhaps 230 BC. Now, what does that mean? Well, 230 is before 160. Now, you might say, well, how come we don't have an original one from the 7th century BC? Well, the paper didn't last. Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't have computers and they didn't have stuff. Although they do have one thing in the Dead Sea Scroll, it's a copper one, but this has got to do with the book of Daniel. Anyway, so the parchment they've got, they say it looks like it dates from perhaps 230 BC, which means it was obviously written before Antiochus Epiphanes rose up, because he wasn't even born then. And he did all these things. So when you ask me, do I believe it? I do, and not just it's not just faith. Scripture says to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good, and I believe I've proved it. Now, the other thing, I'll pick on Wikipedia for a moment. They tell you, well, there's a guy called Darius the Mede. But there is no evidence of this Darius guy ever existing. Therefore, the book of Daniel is wrong. You can't rely on it. Wrong. I went and did research, and sure enough, there's archaeological evidence that this guy existed around the right time. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I
Yeah.
mention that because, look, I still do use Wikipedia for some things, but if you think it's totally accurate, they definitely are biased. All
Oh, no,
right.
I believe
So
it. Wikipedia most definitely is biased. And I think at the end of the day that we really have to do our due diligence and do our research, you know what I mean, and look into these type of things. And like yourself, you looked in different avenues, you know what I mean. You looked in the Islam, you looked in the Bible, you looked in all of these scrolls. I mean, you've done your due diligence. You mapped. It seems like you most definitely mapped it out. Like I'm pretty sure, like in my mind, how I see it is like a wall and with like little stickies and like lines, like like detectives when they're trying to find a case. Like that's how I imagine it for you when you were trying to do this discovery and trying to find your understanding and your reasoning. Because at the end of the day, there's some type of truth to these. You know what I mean? We can't just assume that it's just just ludicrousness just being passed down from generation to generation. Like I feel like there has to be some type of sole reason for all of these prophecies and all of these, you know what I mean, truth that comes out because I mean, in some way, shape, or form, if we allow our minds to truly like read everything out and play it all out, we can really see everything as it comes to play. You know what I mean? Like you said, in history, everything that Daniel predicted, it just all came out eventually in time. Maybe not the way that word per day, like you know what I mean, word by word, but in an essence, it really does come out and it does come to play. You know what I mean? So it really is interesting to think about the ways that all these religions have formed and these religions are moving forward in a direction seeking peace, seeking ultimately being with God and everything like that. You know, so it sucks because time is catching up to me and I'm really pissed off about it because I'm like I feel like we can continue on in this rabbit hole and know like I really want to like pick your brain more and just listen. Like I could literally listen because the way that you're explaining it to me makes sense and the way that you explain it to me is so simple. It's like you're not speaking to me in such an intellectual manner where I'm like over my head, like I have no idea what's being said. Like, no, you know how to word it in a way that makes it like, oh, okay, I can think about this, you know, and that's the whole point of my show is to have people really think about this. So it's like, what can be some lasting words of wisdom or just lasting words in general that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Well, biblical prophecies are coming to pass. But let me mention one other one, which is not Islamic. In the book of Daniel, by the way, there actually was a prediction that the Messiah would come before the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. And it's got to do with what's called the 70 weeks prophecies. Well, to make a long story short, that it pointed to the time that Jesus came, and Jesus was killed probably around 31 AD. We're not exactly sure the year, but maybe then. And the temple in Jerusalem was actually destroyed by General Titus in 70 AD. And the book of Daniel predicted the Messiah would come, and then the temple would be destroyed. And that happened, and everybody knows it. Now, that they can't say, oh, well, Daniel wrote that after it happened. No, because Jesus came in 80, not BC. Okay. So just so that your listeners know, though there's reality there, despite the fact fraudulent or anti biblical scholars discount facts when they see them. But again, you mentioned the book I wrote called Islamic Biblical Prophecies for the 21st Century. And in there, I have the prophecies and the citations where it comes from the Quran. And in Islam, by the way, they have things called hadiths. That's kind of like sayings of Muhammad. It's kind of like the Jews have their Talmud, as the Islam has hadiths. And within Christianity, they have traditions, if you want to call it, etc. So, but what I guess I'd want to let the listeners understand and realize is yes, biblical prophecies are coming to pass. Now, I'm not trying to scare everybody because, as Jesus said, Matthew 24:6, the end is not yet. But it could be in a few years, but it's not yet.
Yeah.
But the prophecies are coming to pass and they will come to pass. And I think people should be diligent about paying attention to them.
Oh, absolutely. People have really have to get their lives in checks and get their hearts in checks because no matter when exactly, because like you said, nobody knows the day, nobody knows the time, nobody knows when, but it doesn't mean that it gives us the right to just live our life like nothing, like what, like there's nothing that's going to have any effect to it because and at the end of the day, what we do matters, how we think matters, how we perceive the world matters, how we go about in the world how matters, how we interact with one another matters. So it's like to pay attention to these prophecies, pay attention to these wordings and what religion teaches us. I mean, it truly is important. So I really do appreciate this because it really does make us all really listen and think and contemplate like what where is our heart leading us? You know what I mean? How do we really want to end this world? I mean, because there's a hell and there's a heaven, and which one do you want to go into? You know what I mean? But that's no here nor there. But ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this conversation, because how could you not? Because I sure did. I most definitely did. Please go check him out. He wrote so many books. I have his website under in the description or on my website. Just click on his photo, it goes directly to it, just so that you can continue on thinking. And he has so much content just so that we can continue on thinking. It's unfair to not even look into it. You know what I mean? It will be doing ourselves a disjustice by not just finding out the truth for ourselves. You know what I mean? And if you really want to know the truth, pray on it. You know what I mean? Just pray on it. And God will always provide you the answer. He will always provide you the clarity. So there's no reason to not go check it out because you might find the answers that you're actually looking for. So with that being said, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.